Okay, the last thing we have to do is install the frets. Now we've already gone ahead and installed 2 frets, and as you can see, they're going right in. They're very, very close to the fretboard. This is just going to work out fine. And I've taken the time to put a support underneath the neck. I have a block, a padded block that is right underneath the heel of the guitar, and then I'm going to take a sandbag and I'm going to put it on top of the guitar. So the entire thing is very sturdy, and I've even taken this block and I've clamped it to the bench. And when you put a fret in, we've got a couple of different ways that we can put a fret in. One way is to use a little arbor press like this. You can get from Stuart McDonald. Another way is a great little tool that works like a vice grips, and it has different size or different radius adapters for the different types of frets. This goes on top of the fret, clamp it down, and it puts the fret right in. That's a very handy tool. And the old-fashioned way is the old-fashioned hammer. And we're going to try to use the plastic end of the hammer, because by using the plastic end, it's going to drive it in very nicely, but it's not going to dent or damage the fret. And the frets that we're going to install, we're first going to bend into an arc like this. And we have a special pair of fret cutters that we're going to use, where we can put down, we want a little bit of overhang, and we can just clip it off. So when we put it down, we have overhang off both sides, okay? And there's a definite arc to the fret wire. And installing it is very easy. Either you're going to have a very easy job of installing the frets or a very difficult job installing the frets. And everything about the preparation that you've put into it up to this far are going to make the difference between an easy install and a difficult install. And one thing that we've done is that we're going to be using medium fret wire. Fret wire comes in different sizes. This fret wire is medium, and it also says right on the label, it says 4 23 thousandths of an inch fret slot. So it's recommended for a 23 thousandths of an inch fret slot, which is exactly what we have. And that's critical to know. I mean, you can get oversized fret wire that needs a bigger slot. So what you want to do is make sure that you get the right wire for the right slot. And basically, we take the fret wire, and we have a little bit sticking off of both sides. And I just take I center it, and I very lightly knock in one end of the fret with my plastic hammer. And I very carefully knock in the other end. And notice I didn't hit it very hard. And holding that down like this, I'm going to start in the middle and knock it in. I didn't bang it really hard. It went right in. I can't even get my fingernail under there. This went in very nicely. Some people will knock down the end. In other words, bend the end down. I don't like to do that, because I found that when I do that, it tends to make it buckle up right on the end. So we're not going to, or at least I'm not going to, hit the end of the fret wire down. And after we install a piece of wire, we have special fret cutters that when I go up against it, I can snip off the end that easily. And we'll snip off the ends of all of these frets that I've just done. Now, before I went and even thought about installing these frets, I took a final piece of sandpaper before I put any frets in it, went over it, any nicks, any bumps, any marks, I've got them all out. It's going to be a lot easier to make the board look great now than after you put the frets in. Once you put the frets in, it's going to be very difficult to clean up the areas in between the different frets. So let's take a minute and talk about how we bend the fret wire. Now this device here is a typical fret wire bender, and it's got a roller in the top that's hooked up to a hand crank. And the idea is that we take the perforated slot, or the slot with the tangs in it, and we put it in the slot on this roller. And as we turn it, got to get it started. Once we turn it, we just keep turning it, and it's going to make the entire fret wire in a full arc. And this does a great job. It really does. So that's how you bend the fret wire to get it in the arc. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fret wire and I'm going to cut all the pieces from this fret, to the 12th fret. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 frets. Everything below the edge of the body, below, in this case, the 14th fret, we're going to do a little bit differently, because that involves putting a weight or something inside to absorb the shock inside the body. So we're going to do everything up to the body. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and just cut each fret so it's a little bit longer than the slot, and I'll lay them out in line. Okay. Again. We'll just cut them right out. And this may be the old-fashioned way of doing things, but it's a tried and true method, and it is the least expensive way of putting in frets. So we need one there. And I'm cutting about maybe a little bit less than 3/8 of an inch overhang on each side for each one of these frets. Okay, 7. And that little bit of an overhang is going to give me the ability to hang on to that fret as I'm knocking it in, which ends up being important. Also allows me to center it properly. 9. Okay. There we are. 10. And 11. Okay. So let's start putting them in. And I'll take it slow. Take the fret, center it, got the same amount of overhang on either side, catch it in the slot and make sure it's straight up and down. Take the plastic end, knock it in, knock it in. So both ends are now knocked in. Hold it down, hit it lightly, hit it in the center. And what we've just done is, by putting it in on one side, lightly, starting it on the other side, and by knocking it in the middle, as that fret straightens out, the barbs are going to go down and then sideways into the wood, and they're actually going to grab the wood a lot more efficiently than if we just hit it straight in. Okay, and what I'm looking for is I want that fret to be dead up against the rosewood, which it is. And once you get moving, they'll go in kind of quickly. Tap it in, hold it down, hit it in the center. And again, I'm not really hammering. I'm just nicely knocking them in place. All right? And it's very important to get it started correctly, straight down. Because if you don't get it started correctly, you could break off a piece of the rosewood or elongate the slot, and then the fret doesn't fit in correctly. So try to get it started very carefully. So we get it straight up and down, knock one side in, knock one side in. I didn't hit it very hard. Hit it in the middle. Very good. Now let's take a closer look at one. So I lined up the fret. Make sure it's nice and even on both sides. Straight up and down. Knock it in lightly. Knock it in lightly. Hold it down. Hit it in the middle. And she's right up against the rosewood. A nice tight fit. I can't even catch my fingernail underneath it. Same thing. We're going to lightly knock it in, hold it down, hit it in the middle, go over it, always using the plastic end of the hammer, which is very important. Well, we've got a few more frets left until we get to the body. Line it up, it's straight up and down. Knock one side in, knock on the other side in. And your ability to get these frets in this easily and this cleanly have everything to do with the preparation you put into, and see, these are very tight. They're not going to come out. The preparation you put into setting everything up. You cut the slots correctly. You chose the correct wire and wire size. When you went to hit it in, you had the fret straight up and down. You just lightly tapped in the sides and then hit it in the middle. So these are all set. So our next job is going to be to cut off the ends, and I'm going to take my fret snippers and just cut them off like that. Right down the line. With that sandbag on the end of the guitar there, holds everything in place so nothing goes sliding around as I'm snipping these off. And I'm just holding the fret snippers at this point straight up and down. But I'm pushing the end of the blade right into the side of the fretboard. So I'm literally cutting them off as close as I can to the fretboard. Okay, we'll just take the sandbag off for a minute, and we're just going to hold it up and take a quick look. And I'm looking down the row of frets, and they're all right into the rosewood. Nice, clean, solid fret. These aren't going to go anyplace. Okay. So let's take a closer look at what we have to do to get the last remaining 5 frets, because we have to put something inside the guitar to absorb the shock. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut me some more fret wire. There's one. There is 2. Okay, time to bend another piece. Now let's take a closer look at how we're going to use this bender on the last piece. So I'm taking the fret wire, I'm going to turn it upside down so that the barbed portion of the fret wire is sticking straight up. And in this roller, there is a slot. I'm going to push the barbed portion into the slot, and it's going to hit this bearing right there. And then I'm going to push it in and move the handle at the same time, and it's going to come right around. Now I'm not going to do the whole thing because I don't need the whole fret wire. So I've got 2 pieces here. I need to get 3 more out of this. So we'll get this here. There's the 3rd one. And there is the 4th one. And there is the last one. Okay. So I got these frets ready to go. And let me move the camera and we'll take a look in this area here. Okay, so I'm ready to put the last 5 frets in. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start them all. Because once I get going, my hands are going to be doing 3 things at once. And it's going to be much easier if I can get them all started and not worry about that. Good. And last one. Good. All right, now what I have inside the guitar is I have a very heavy piece of metal. And I'm going to hold that piece of metal up against the underside of the fretboard. And while it's there, I still have the block under the heel. So between the block under the heel and the metal that I'm holding up underneath, I should have enough meat under there to prevent this from bouncing out. So I'm going to hit it in the middle and hit it home. Hit it in the middle, 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 hit it home. And that's all she wrote. And I'll very carefully take my big chunk of metal out of there. This is actually a miniature anvil, solid iron. And we're going to cut our frets off evenly right up to the edge of the fretboard. So we're almost done fretting the fretboard. Finish cutting this off. And again, I'm pushing the end of these nippers right up to the edge of the fretboard, so I'm cutting it off. Okay. That didn't want to come off. Okay. Last one. Yeah. Good. There we have it. We got one long fret here. Good. Okay, the next hurdle that we got to jump across is going to be all of the frets that we've snipped off are going to have a very sharp edge. And we've got to go and we've got to take each sharp edge with a 3-corner file, and I'm going to go straight down. And the hard part is I just want to get the edge flattened off, but I don't want to go into the fretboard itself. Easier said than done. So just go slow, keep an eye on the side, look right at it like I'm doing here, and just get it so it is even with the fretboard, but don't take any material off the side of the fretboard. We're doing a couple of these. So if you're in this position I'm in right now, looking at the edge, it's a heck of a lot easier to do it. And as soon as you feel that sharp edge, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Just go slow with each individual fret. Okay, a couple of sharp edges, And again, we're not trying to take any material off the side of the fretboard. So that's what we're worried about. And go right down the line and do the sharp edges straight up and down. Okay. Now once you get here to the the frets that are over the body of the guitar, we want to put some tape down to mask the bodies so we don't do any damage to it. And now we've got to go in sideways, which is going to be a little trickier and not as easy. See if I can take this out of the handle. Be a lot easier. I'll get another file. That's even better. This is one of those occasions where it's much easier not to have a handle. Still has some sharp edges. And again, we're not trying to take any material off the side of the fretboard. Easier said than done. Okay, not bad. Now all the edges are straight up and down, and we've knocked off the sharp edges. Looking good. Then we have another tool that this one here has a Teflon block that can ride on the frets. It has a file that sticks out on a 45-degree angle, and the idea is I can run this back and forth and put a 45-degree angle on the edges of all my frets. And it's done a great job. I've got a nice angle on all my fret ends. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is attack these other sharp edges on the other side, and we'll be back in a moment. Well, a well-dressed guitar and fretboard for this kind of work looks something like this. We've taken and put masking tape between all the frets, and as they get progressively closer, you'll just have to take and cut the tape in half and sort of put it in with 2 steps. We're going to be doing a lot of filing, a lot of repair work around the frets, so we want to protect our new fretboard. And this is normal, of course, for any fret work that you do. If you're working on 1 or 2 frets, you could use a nice fret shield like this. You can get this from Stu Mac. They're great tools. But when you're doing a lot of frets, sometimes you're better off just to put the masking tape on it. I also take a fret shield like this so I can get at the end. I just bend it over so I can get at the end of the fret too. So our next point, or our next problem, is that we want to take and we want to put magic marker on all the frets. You can use any color you want. Don't worry about getting it on the fretboard because it is now locked off. And we're going to take and we're going to level the frets or sand them down. If we took a straight edge and we put it on here and we look through it, we're going to see some gaps. You can never trust that after putting in brand new frets that they're all going to be perfectly aligned. That's usually never the case. If you take a fret rocker, some frets are going to be fine, some frets are going to rock on us, and I got one right there, high fret there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our 12-inch radius sanding block, and I put 220 sandpaper on here, sticking sandpaper. And I modified this a little bit. I've made a bevel here at the very end and a bevel here. I find that's easier to run this back and forth. And basically, after we put the magic marker on, we're going to just run this back and forth and take a look at what we got. And it hasn't touched down here, which isn't terribly surprising, because this sometimes can be the downhill side because the neck has gone on with a back angle. So it's not surprising if from the body going towards the sound hole it hasn't touched yet. But going further, it looks like everything is touching except this one here. So we'll go a little bit more. It's going to help us not only in leveling everything, but it's going to level it in relation to the 12-degree radius that we already have on the fretboard itself. So now I have a good contact all the way across, except down here, which I explained. This is good, this is good, this is good. Everything's looking pretty good. We're going to do a little bit more down here. Alright, let's brush it off. Okay, all of these started to make contact. A little bit more down here. Alright. So far I'm looking at a pretty good sanding pattern. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to recrown the frets now that they're all level. If we take our straight edge, everything looks very nice. And if we take our fret rocker, I can put this across 3 frets at once and make sure it doesn't rock on any given position. This should be very good for us. So the tool that I'm going to use is going to be this diamond file, and it has 2 settings. It has a 300 and it has a 150 setting. I'm going to use the 150 initially. I can just pull it out and change position. This is another very nice StuMac tool. And the interior of the file is diamond based and it's rounded, and it can match the outline of the fret. So I'm going to run it back and forth in 2 ways. I'm pushing sort of on an angle this way and then pushing on an angle this way, and at the same time I'm trying to follow the radius of the fret. I don't want to change the radius of the fret, which is going to be very important. Okay, and we're just going to come through and we're going to do all of these frets, and what I'm looking for is to get this back to a rounded shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to get it to basically a rounded shape. And I'm pushing 2 ways. I'm pushing on an angle that way as I go around, and I'm pushing on an angle this way as I go around. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to round all of these with this fret file. We'll be back in a minute. Well, I've recrowned all of them, and this is just going to be very rough, even with the fine one. Now I've taken the 150, which was rough, and then I've taken the 300, which is going to be a lot lighter, or a lot finer, and gone down all of them. And just run it over the top to clean it up. But even with this 300 grit that I'm using here, it still needs a lot of work. And what I've made for this is my own tool. We'll get to in a minute. We just finished all of these. It'll take a minute. I'm just trying to smooth out the roughness with this 300 grit. These files aren't the smoothest file in the world, and you have to go a little bit farther than this finish to actually consider the fret finish. So I'm going to take my magic marker, and again I'm going to put marks on this, and this is more for making sure that I didn't forget a fret. And then I'm going to take my special tool, and this is a tool that I made out of a solid block of walnut, and what I did is I thinned it out, made a handle, and this section right here has the same profile as a fret, so I can actually go back and forth in this profile. And then what I do is I take 220 sandpaper and I stick it to the side, nice and firmly, fold it over, just like that. And then I put it on the fret, and then following the radius, I'm going to go back and forth and polish that fret. Oop. Might need a new set of sandpaper here. So I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just trying to follow the course of the fret back and forth until I'm satisfied that I've cleaned that fret up the way I want to. And I keep advancing it a little at a time every time I go to a fret. And again, I'm trying to keep with the radius of the fret, and I'm looking to make sure everything on that fret is cleaned up, which we're doing a good job. And I'm sort of moving it back and forth, trying to get it both ways. A little bit on an angle this side, a little bit on an angle this side. Okay. And that's looking good. So I'm going to do every single fret exactly like this, making sure that I have good contact and totally cleaned up the entire fret. And this is 220, so I'm not taking hardly anything off, but I am cleaning up the areas that absolutely need to be cleaned up. So I'm going to continue to do all the frets this way, and I'll be right back. All right, all of the frets are now cleaned up with the 220. And the last thing I did is I want to clean up the very end of the frets because they always tend to be a little sharp. And this tool is the perfect tool to do it, because if I go to the end and I just go down like this, it rounds it off and smooths it on the end, so I don't have to use a file. I find that using a file. So I've done that to all the frets. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to polish the frets. And so I'm going to put a little piece of some little metal polish, paste type metal polish on the frets. Get a rag. Right. And I'm going to take my Dremel grinder with a felt polishing wheel and go right down the line, getting the end and polishing the fret. And this is going to get these frets kind of hot, so you can't burn your finger on them after you polish them. But I'm going to get each one a nice, good polish. It doesn't take much. The 220 really cleaned it up, and the polishing is just going to make it nice and smooth. So let's take a look and see what we got. If we wipe off the polish, we can see that we have a nice bright chrome finish. No nicks, no burrs. Everything is exceptionally nice and smooth on the edges. It comes out very, very professional. It looks like the chrome plated. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to polish all the frets. And the only thing left is going to be stringing it up. So hopefully by the time we get back, we'll be strumming a few tunes. We'll be right back. Well, it looks like I got the right amount of relief in the neck. The action looks good. Time to give it a road test.